Will was a magicless loser born into a world where magic was everything and people without magical talents were treated worse than slaves. He was always lonely and awkward, but still had a childhood friend who he loved, but she moved on because he didn't have any magical talent. He still enrolls in a prestigious university with the goal of getting his crush back, but gets bullied there as well. Thankfully, he is saved when the headmaster shows him that he is a natural warrior with a sword in his hand, after which he starts honing his skills to become the strongest in the world. He heads off to a high-level dungeon where he engages with giant beasts who shoot magic spells at him, but he dodges them and uses his incredible speed and prowess with his sword to utterly style on the monster and slice it in half with a single slash. The next morning he goes to the classroom extremely tired, where the professor named Edward teaches them about the basics of alchemy and how to produce sulfur, which helps in the creation of explosives. Edward notices Will dozing off in the back, so he calls his name, but unaware about this, Will keeps snoring until Edward shouts his name, which surprises Will as he stands up immediately. Edward calls him out to the front and asks him to demonstrate what they were just talking about, and without any other choice, Will is forced to go in front of the entire class to demonstrate the process. Edward tells him that it's super easy and all he has to do is produce some flames and sulfur will be created. Will shakily takes out the wand from his ass and chants the spell to bring forth flames, but to his dismay, not even a small spark emerges from the wand. All the students start laughing at him as if he was a stand-up comedian, but the teacher tells them to shut up. Edward looks at Will with disgust as he claims that he has no idea how someone like Will can be so good at theory but utterly fail at any kind of practical magic, and wonders how Will even got selected for this academy. Suddenly, a red-haired boy named Sion takes out his wand and confidently points it towards the items on the desk before using his flame magic, completely burning them and creating sulfur, while Will cowers behind the flames. Edward tells them to not do anything without permission, as he immediately creates a huge crystal of sulfur with his magic spell. He tells them that magic is the most important thing in this world, as mages are heroes, and to survive at this academy, the students need to be good at magic, and fools who have no idea of how to control magic should simply leave the academy. After the class was over, Sion and his cronies walk over to Will and embarrass him by saying that he can only kill low-level dungeon monsters, but a classmate and childhood friend of Will's named Cole walks out and tells Sion to leave him alone, as he is much nicer than him and his group. Sion gets a bit flustered, but laughs it off, claiming that kindness and hard work won't get you very far without magic, before walking away with his goons. Call and Will start walking while she tells him not to worry too much, but Will seems pretty used to this bullying as he looks towards the sky, claiming that it looks beautiful. It turns out that several years ago, the humans were trapped under a layer of darkness and never saw the sky, because they lived in fear of some evil spirits who cast a shadow on the entire world. Thankfully, 5 legendary mages stood up to the evil spirits, and after a huge battle, they managed to push them back and freed the humans from the darkness, showing them what the real sky looked like. These mages were known as Maja Vanders, and that title now passes down to the most powerful mages of this world. She remembers about the promise he made to one of his childhood friends named Elfie, who used to show him storybooks of Maja Vanders, and they made a pact with each other that they will become the Maja Vanders one day. She ended up keeping her end of the deal, as she had incredible talent, and she rose up the ranks quickly to become the youngest Maja Vander in the history and started living up the Divine Tower, while Will turned out to be far below average, barely sticking on to the dream and the promise. Later that day, he goes in to meet Professor Walk, who ends up screaming at him when he gets to know that this Harry Potter knockoff went to level 7 dungeons all alone, and tells him that one day he will get killed. Will falls to the ground and apologizes, but asks whether he will get the credit for it or not. Walk takes a sigh and awards him 2 credits for his troubles, but while Will was busy celebrating, Walk asks him whether he has still not given up on the dream to become a Vander. He claims that to even have a small chance of becoming a Vander, he needs to get admitted in the Upper Institute, and to do that he needs a lot of credits in writing, spell work, and fighting. If he is not able to use any spells, he will never get any credits for spell work, so no matter how many credits he gets in the other 2, he will never qualify. Will claims that no matter what, he is going to try, so Walk tells him that first he will have to graduate, but as far as he knows, he needs 4 more credits by the end of this week. This shocks Will, who immediately starts searching for monsters that can give him 4 credits, when Walk tells him that there is a monster called Baskerville on the 6th floor which hasn't been defeated yet. Will immediately hugs his teacher, but unbeknownst to them, Sion ends up overhearing this and decides to head out to the dungeons himself to kill the monster before Will, so he gets kicked out of the academy for not having enough credits. Later that evening, Will enters the cave alongside his familiar Kiki and tells her to use her nose to find the monster, but Kiki doesn't seem too keen on it, as last time when Will fought a Baskerville, she ended up getting burnt by its breath. On the other side, Sion and his cronies also enter the 6th floor, determined to find the beast before Will, so he gets kicked out. One of his underlings with pink feminist hair asks whether it's a good idea for just 3 mages to enter the 6th floor, but Sion looks at him angrily, claiming that he is one of the best mages in the class and can deal with it. He thinks angry racist thoughts while walking and tells his underlings to use their scan magic to find the location of the beast, when suddenly a huge monster appears and punches the spiky-haired boy so hard that he becomes a pancake on the wall. Sion is beyond shocked, unable to move, while the feminist starts screaming like a bitch in terror. Will overhears the scream and immediately gets up before running with the speed of lightning towards the noise as he gets worried about someone getting hurt. He turns around a corner when he spots Sion on the floor shooting fire blasts at the monster, who doesn't seem bothered by it at all. Will immediately recognizes the monster as the Sentinel, who is an extremely strong monster worth 10 credit scores, but wonders what it's doing on this level dungeon. He realizes that Sion's magic is nothing for the monster, as it completely ignores the flame blasts and keeps moving towards the terrified boy on the floor. He thinks about helping him when suddenly he remembers about all the times this asshat of a person ridiculed him for no reason. This makes him want to shut his eyes and pretend he never saw it. But he suddenly remembers Elfie, who told him that he is the kindest person she knew and gifted him a pair of glasses. This reminds him of who he truly is, and he puts on the glasses, while the monster raises his weapon to finish the cocky brat once and for all. He blocks the monster's attack just in time and forces it away to save Sion's life. While back at the academy, Edward enters Walk's room and tells him to immediately send his familiar into the dungeons, as Sion and his lackeys went inside to the 6th floor without permission. Walk realizes what has happened, but tells Edward not to worry as Will is also on the same floor. Back in the dungeon, Will clashes with the monster again and again, blocking his attack and outmaneuvering him before dealing a swift slash to his arm which slices a finger off. The monster angrily tries to attack, but Will dodges the attack as he moves through the air like an eagle. The monster finally catches Will, but Will manages to block the blow with his sword. He gets blasted back, after which the monster throws rocks at him, which he slashes through effortlessly. He jumps around the monster and manages to land on his back before stabbing him right through the neck. The monster starts flailing while Sion is beyond shocked to see Will's capabilities. Back at the academy, Edward is also shocked at seeing this, while Walk claims that Will is an outcast as he has no magic, but superhuman strength for a mage. He is as hardy as a dwarf, and his brain is so capable that he learns all the attack patterns of any race just by having one look at them. They watch as Will manages to slash off the monster's arm, and then calmly walks towards the giant sword on the ground. As Will picks up the giant sword effortlessly, Walk tells Edward that in a world filled with magic and wizards, Will is the only warrior. The monster shoots an energy beam out of its mouth, but Will manages to block it with the giant sword and slashes it at the monster, who gets sliced into little pieces and falls to the ground, unmoving. Will then walks over and gives Sion his helping hand, who looks still shocked, while Edward can't believe his eyes as he screams at Walk that a person without magic can never surpass a magician and storms off the room, while Walk realizes that Edward is on a large dose of copium right now. He knows that the story of Will is going to become legend as he turns the world upside down by making Wistoria the only place in the world where a wand and a sword meet. That night, Will remembers how when he joined this academy, he was laughed at by everyone for not having any trace of magic, and people always bullied him and called him a loser, claiming that he only got into the academy because he was friends with Elfie the Maja Vander. Those comments hurt him terrible, and he fell into depression when one day the principal of the school called in Will alongside Walk to have a meeting. She had a look at the boy with no magic talent herself, and wondered how he got into such a prestigious academy, but unlike others, she decided to test him out. She used her flotation magic to throw a dagger towards Will, who grabs it as if he was meant to hold it since birth. Walk looked a little confused, but the old lady was confident in what she was doing. She immediately covers Will with magical crickles ready to blast fireballs at him, which scares Walk as he thought this might be the end of the boy. But Will didn't skip a beat and immediately slashed all the magic circles around him in a single elegant slash before dropping back on his feet. Wok falls over in shock, while the old lady laughed, claiming that this boy was meant to hold a sword and not a wand. She tells them that she is going to let Will continue studying at this academy, while Wok will be his guardian since Will doesn't have any parents. Wok asks her whether it would be safe for a boy with no magic to study at a university filled with mages, but the old lady confidently tells him that Will can manage. Tears start flowing down Will's face as he looks up at the lady and simply asks whether he can ever become strong enough without magic to become a Maja Vander and climb the tower to reunite with Elfie, which brings a smile to the old lady's face. She tells him that if he has unwavering determination to climb to that level and a strong will to fight, there is still a chance for him to make that climb. This fills Will with a new fire and determination to become the strongest in this world. The next morning, he wakes up a little groggy but heads down to his class where Wok explains the workings of the academy. He tells them that to become a Maja Vander, they all first have to qualify to study at the Upper Institute, which opens a path for them to become the strongest mages and rule from the top. To reach the Upper Institute, however, they need to either create a new magic spell, or they need at least 7,200 credits in this academy, which is extremely difficult. He tells everyone that they shouldn't even dream of reaching the Upper Institute since none of them are even getting enough credits to graduate. That day Wok drilled them with supplementary lessons, after which Will was completely spent. He meets up with Call, who asks whether Wok's class was very difficult. Will sighs and claims that he made them repeat several lessons and gave them a bunch of homework, but it was all because they didn't have enough credits. Call claims that she likes Wok as at least he tries to help the students, whereas Ed would have simply left them to fail. Will laughs and they reach a corner, when they suddenly hear a ruckus and peek around to find Sion and his underlings surrounded by a bunch of students as they tell everyone that Sion defeated the Sentinel monster worth 10 credits all alone. All the students seem shocked and praise Sion for his strength, but he seems pretty stressed about it all as he is the only one who knows the truth about the situation and how Will is the one who defeated the monster while Sion was lying on the floor like a helpless baby. Suddenly he spots Will walking past alongside Call, and this immediately fills him with rage as he shoves everyone out of the way before grabbing Will by the collar and saying that what happened that day can't be true as Will is completely talentless. Call immediately comes to his defense and tells Sion to let him go. The brat clenches his teeth and takes his hands off of Will before walking away in anger, followed by his cronies. Call asks whether anything happened between them, but Will lies that nothing happened. Meanwhile, Ed goes into the Grand Master's office and tells her that Will should be immediately kicked out of the school. The Grand Master looks completely relaxed as she asks why does he think that way, but Ed replies that Will is a warrior with no magic abilities and yet is trying to become better than people with magic. He claims that a magic academy is no place for a warrior, but the Grand Master smiles and claims that kicking Will out in his 6th and final year would be very cruel. She takes out a register filled with information about the students and opens Will's page before noting that he has good marks in writing and has been gaining credits consistently even without having magic. She claims that this makes him an incredible student as not only is he keeping up with others, but he is outperforming them even after being at a major disadvantage. She tells him that even if he can't become a Maja Vander, he can easily become a scholar or a healer and help others. Ed claims that if he wanted that then he would have had no problem with Will, but Will wants to become a Maja Vander. The Grand Master thinks for a moment and claims that it can definitely be a problem and tells Ed to design a test for him. She tells him that he knows Will's secret now as well, so she will give him complete control over the place and way he takes his test. If he makes his way through Ed's test, he will stay at this academy, but if he can't then Ed can expel him if he wants. Ed tells her that he is not as lenient as Wokner before walking off with a smile on his face. On the other hand, Will is completely unaware of this plan and keeps going on with his day. Call helps him open his locker as it can only be opened and locked with magic, which he doesn't have. Call spots his sword inside the locker as he can't carry it in school and feels bad for him, but soon they both enter the library. He immediately starts revising the history of magic and also about the other races. Call tells him that he is already the best at writing and shouldn't stress too much, but Will knows that even if he loses a single credit, he will have no chance of qualifying for the Upper Institute. Moreover, he likes reading the story about the war between the dwarves and the humans, as even though the mages were superior both in number and in skills, The warrior dwarves still stood their ground and fought to the bitter end. Before they can talk more, Ed appears behind them like Severus Snape and tells Will to immediately meet up with him in the exam hall alone. Will follows him without a word, and when they reach the spell hall, Ed tells him that he is going to take a test. If Will manages to strike even a single blow on Ed, he will receive 5 credits for spell work. But if he fails, he will be expelled from the academy, as people who can't use magic shouldn't even look at Maja Vanders, let alone try to become one. Will is still shocked, but Ed doesn't wait a single second and conjures all his mana before creating a magic circle right beneath a shocked Will. Back inside the academy, the headmaster calls Walk in and informs him about what is happening. She creates a TV for him where he is shocked to see Will facing off against Ed. He dodges the magic circles beneath him, which explodes, but Ed pursues and keeps shooting exploding magic, while Will barely manages to escape, constantly running away from the mage. Walk tries to speak against it, claiming that it's too cruel and one-sided since Ed is one of the strongest mage in the kingdom and very close to becoming a Maja Vander himself. Ed uses another dark explosion, which Will barely dodges as he breathes hard from all the running, but realizes that he can't stay still. He starts running with all his might once again and circles around Ed before trying to land a spinning kick. But unfortunately, it gets completely blocked by Ed with his magic shield, as he blasts him away. He spits blood from his mouth as he sees Ed through his blurry vision, realizing that he is completely outmatched as both Ed's defense and offense are completely without any holes, and there is no way he can even scratch him. He tries to get up once again, while Ed gets ready to finish the battle, and overlaps the same spell multiple times to create a wall of explosions that Will didn't even know was possible. He starts running away, but the explosions blast him away once again as Ed keeps blasting him up in the air like a ping pong from one end to the other, damaging Will's body to the point where he falls to the ground almost unconscious. He tries to get up, cursing his weak magicless body as he wishes he had his sword right now to defend himself. Meanwhile, Cole walks back to her locker in order to leave for the day while she wonders what kind of lessons is Ed giving. She suddenly imagines Will getting tortured by Ed with whips when a gate opens, scaring her, but it turns out to be Kiki who seems hurt and is bleeding. She walks up to Will's locker and starts scratching at it, and Cole immediately realizes that there is something wrong. Back in the exam hall, Will is down on the floor while Ed walks up to him and puts his foot on Will's head, telling him to accept defeat, but Will pushes his foot away and tells him that he will never do that. He gets up once again and tells Ed that he will reach the pinnacle of magic with a sword in his hand because he wants to fulfill his promise to the person he loves. This enrages Ed even more as he gets ready to finish the battle, but just then Call enters the hall and throws a sword towards Will. He immediately grabs it and then puts on his special glasses ready for a fight. Ed lashes out at him with his magic, but Will effortlessly slices through it, shocking the mage. This makes him burst with anger as he prepares to fire a barrage of explosions at Will, who gets scared by his teacher's look. Ed immediately starts blasting, but Will shows his insane speed and dodges the attack while remembering the Dwarf King who lost everyone in the battle and still kept going forward and landed a hit against the Maja Vander. He decides that he will do the same as he jumps up in the air, dodging all the attacks and explodes towards Ed, breaking his barrier with his sword as they both stop at each other's throat. Will breathes hard, with a wand in his face, while Ed is completely shocked as a small cut appears on his face. Angry at his own failure, Ed walks away telling Will that he gained 5 credits, while Will falls onto the ground as Call picks him up, while he wonders how many more mages will he have to defeat to become the strongest. Will dreams about the day Elfie told him he was the kindest and bravest person she knew, before giving him the special glasses as her parting gift. It was the day she had to go to the tower forever, because she was a Maja Vander already. As she walked away slowly, Will cried out Elfie's name, telling her that he will definitely make it to the tower, even if the entire world tries tearing them apart. He promised her that he would come to her, and then they would see the sunset together, just like they promised each other in childhood. Tears flooded Elfie's eyes as she heard this, and she turns around, wiping her tears and telling Will that she'll be waiting for him. Soon after that, Elfie climbed up the stairs of the tower, and Will was left alone and heartbroken. Professor Werkner tried comforting him, but it had the opposite effect, and Will started crying. However, he promised his professor that this was the last time he was being a pathetic crybaby. Back to the present, Will is working early in the morning, delivering newspapers to the houses in the city. Just as he is done with the work on the street, An old and bulky man named Don greets him and tells him to do his best. Will then hastily climbs a flight of stairs and trips, sending all the newspapers in his bag flying. However, with his lightning-fast reflexes and nimble arms, he grabs all the newspapers in an instant. Unfortunately, one newspaper escaped his grasp, and as Will picks it up, he finds a news article about Elfie, who has just created another type of magic. She has earned the achievement of being the first mage in history to create 12 types of magics. Will is once again full of determination to work hard so that he can stand by her side, when he reads the article further and finds that the Upper Institute has issued an order to the Academy students, and the client of the order is none other than Elfie. Will freaks out on learning this, and immediately runs to his dorm, where he asks his roommate Rosti to make a magic device for him. Rosti asks him why is he so excited, and Will tells him about the order Elfie has issued, so he is going to take part in it. He begins changing into his uniform as he tells Rosti that the order is to procure the cores of monsters called Frostwalkers that are found on the 4th floor of the dungeon. Apparently, Elfie needs them as catalysts, and every student who helps in procuring the cores will be rewarded. That is why Will wants Rosti to prepare a magic item that can help him clear the 4th floor. Seeing him so excited and straightforward, Rosti starts laughing. He was already working on the magic item that Will uses from time to time, and hands it to him. Will thanks him and begins heading away, but Rosti stops him and stuffs bread into his mouth as he asks him to take care of himself. Will soon reaches the 4th floor of the dungeon, but it is already too crowded with dozens of students hunting down the Frostwalkers for their cores. Just as Will is about to join in the action, a huge explosion rattles him. It was because of Sion's attack that obliterated a bunch of Frostwalkers in one go, and while his lackeys suck up to him, Sion is not satisfied. He thinks about the fight between Will and the giant monster that fuels his rage and motivates him to become stronger. Unaware of this, Will really believes that Sion is cool. He thinks that there isn't anything left for him to hunt here, so he heads deeper inside the 4th floor, but comes face to face with giant penguin monsters. The monsters are hostile, so Will immediately draws his sword, wears his special glasses, and then lunges at them. With a few clean strikes, he manages to slash the penguin monsters with ease, saving the nerdy girl who was about to be killed by the monsters. The girl is dumbfounded at what she just saw. Will defeated the monsters using a sword and not magic, and that is beyond comprehension for her. Will approaches her, and the girl thanks him for saving her life, before introducing herself as Iris, a 4th-year student at the Academy. At the same time, Walk is giving a lecture about the greatness of creating new types of spells, which alone is enough to make the mage who created the magic climb up the tower. He says that the new magic forms are named after their creators, and if anyone in the class ever creates a new magic, they will etch their name in history. The students begin gossiping about how this approach is not practical, because only the top 0.1% can manage to do that. Just then, a student named Rose asks Walk if Elfie, who has created 12 new forms of magic, is really good, and he says that she is good beyond belief. He calls Elfie one of the greatest mages in the entire history of their world, and Cole remarks that the childhood friend Will is chasing after is really special. Her friend Rose teases her, asking if she is jealous that Elfie will steal her crush Will away from her. Cole freaks out on hearing that, and gets scolded by Walk. Back in the dungeon, Will is walking with Iris, who has heard about the talentless book learner of the 6th year. Will is hurt, but he asks her if she doesn't feel any disdain towards a loser like him. Iris curiously asks how can she look down upon her savior. She says that even if Will doesn't have magic, she respects him for his special talents. He gets flustered and changes the topic to the order issued by Elfie. Iris affirms, saying that she wants to help the Majavander who hold up the sky. Her words force Will to think about how no one in this world has seen the true sky. The enormous magic power of the 5 Majavander cloaks their world, hiding it from invaders. What they see is the false sky, which is a great barrier that keeps their world safe. According to the lore, when the fake sky falls, darkness will shroud the world again, and chaos will follow. That is why the students who are out here meeting orders are not doing this just to get into good graces of the Majavander, but because they also want to support the sky from falling. He is snapped from his thoughts as Iris tells him that she has met Elfie before. She recites the story of how she was in trouble in the dungeon one day, as all kinds of nefarious monsters surrounded her. She was just waiting for her death, when suddenly, all the monsters were frozen. Iris turned around to see Elfie gleaming in the sunlight, looking like a goddess. Elfie helped her up gently, and ever since then, Iris stands her. While Iris is busy monologuing, Kiki gains Will's attention and leads him to a patch on the ground that has something curious. Iris asks him what is he doing, and Will shows her an ice fragment that the Frostwalkers leave behind as they move. The fragment here is really big, and now Will is certain that a rather powerful Frostwalker is ahead. He begins walking towards the cave in front of them, and Iris asks him how can he be so sure because she couldn't find any trace of the Frostwalkers using her search magic. Will tells her that magic is great, but it is not absolute, especially in the dungeon. He tells the girl that on top of this belief, he also has some knowledge and experience. She doesn't understand the significance of those things, but Will is completely alert because he knows what will happen next. A giant Frostwalker had been hiding on the ceiling, and it pounces at the unguarded Iris. However, Will had anticipated that, so he moves quickly, taking the girl to safety as the monster hits the ground. He jumps away to safety, and Iris recognizes the giant ice monster with dozens of eyes as a Frost Rex, which is the highest evolved form of a Frostwalker. The monster roars loudly, and Iris recalls that the Frost Rex is a monster worth 6 credits, which makes it really dangerous. In the meantime, the monster charges an ice beam and fires it ahead, but Will jumps out of the line of fire that is soon covered with sharp ice spikes. Will leaves Iris in a safe spot as he heads to fight the monster, but she stops him, telling him that physical attacks won't work on a Frost Rex, whose power is so strong that it can even freeze the sturdy dwarves just by one touch. However, as Will puts on the magic tool made by Rosti, he tells Iris not to worry, because he has defeated the monster numerous times already. He charges towards the Frost Rex, avoiding its ice beam by jumping up. Will lands on the ground behind the Frost Rex and speeds towards it, sliding underneath it. The monster, unable to find Will, begins shooting the ice beam indiscriminately, forcing Iris and Kiki to run away. Will then encircles the monster while it is distracted looking at the roof and throws the magic tool over it, which gets attached to the monster's side through a hook. After that, Will slides under the monster, tightening a strong rope around it that cracks its skin. He keeps coiling the rope around the monster repeatedly, completely restraining it with the rope. The furious monster keeps on attacking recklessly, and once Will has succeeded in laying out the framework for his final attack, he stands in front of the monster. It uses a cold breath that begins freezing Will's skin, but he knows that his work is almost done. The Frost Rex is weak to fire and explosions, and that is exactly what he is going to use. He creates friction on the magic tool in his hand, sending a swift flame that travels down the rope and ultimately reaches the magic tool, which is a very powerful bomb. The magic tool explodes, shattering the giant monster into bits. As the smoke and steam settles, Will recoils the magic tool Rosti has made for him, and then goes to collect the ice core of the fallen monster. Iris had been watching all this, and on seeing Will defeat the giant monster without magic, her expressions suddenly change. Turns out she was not the naive girl she was pretending to be, but an agent of someone higher up the food chain. She has discovered that the talentless Will is stronger than what she had heard, and wonders how to report this to her superiors. However, as Will tells her that they should head back now, she resumes her act and goes with him. Later, Iris reaches the White Tower and goes to the room on the top, where 4 of the 5 Majavanders are seated on their thrones. They are looking for skilled people who can help their world prepare for the day the sky falls, and Iris works for them. She reports that she saw great talent in the magicless boy called Will, and recommends him to be let into the tower. 2 of the Majavanders are strictly opposed to this, but the white-haired guy named Zio is interested, and Elfie just smiles to herself. Zio is willing to let anyone who is skilled stand by his side, even if it is a dwarf, but the elf girl Elle is not happy to hear that because elves believe dwarves are barbarians. The redhead Carriot stops them from fighting, and says that they don't have to make any decision now, because they can wait to see Will's performance in the grand festival that is going to take place soon. Everyone agrees and leaves one by one, and only Elfie is left in the room. Iris was sent after Will by Elfie herself, and she takes out the giant ice core he sent her as she repeats her promise to wait forever for Will. The day of the great examination has finally arrived at the Magic Academy, and the students are gathered in the hall, prepared to fight for their points. Each student must get at least 7 in 200 credit points to be able to graduate from the school, and the maximum credits one can get is 12,000. However, this is extremely difficult, and only those who are able to reach this high credit score are allowed to compete and train to become Magia Vanders, the highest ranked mages in the world. The exam is being supervised by a professor who has summoned giant metallic golems which the students need to destroy. He watches as the students make their attempt to create the strongest magic spells in order to earn the most credit points. Xian is among the first few students to attack the metallic golems and decides to use a powerful fire spell which spews solar flames at the monsters, causing them to melt and disintegrate without much of a fight. Call is up next, and she first creates enormous boulders in the air. Then, using a special teleportation spell, she allows them to drop into the portals she has created on the floor. She aligns the other magical portals to aim at the metal golems, and as soon as it steps into the center, she fires the boulders at them, successfully demolishing them to the ground. The supervisor announces that she and Xian have passed their minimum requirement and can now graduate. Will steps into the fighting arena next, and the students watch intently to see what he can achieve without any magical abilities. He holds a wand in one hand, which is completely useless to him since he does not have the capability to cast any spells. He runs toward the monster and makes a fist with his hand, preparing to throw a punch at his giant opponent. The students see this and taunt him for his plan, while screaming insults at him. Unfortunately, he gets distracted by this, and in the second that he looks away, the golem whacks him, sending him flying across the floor. He is seen as a book learner with zero street smartness, and is called a loser by his fellow pupils as he lays on the ground barely able to get up. Wignall, the green-haired boy, and Lehana compete next. They are some of the top-ranked students of this batch and have already cleared their minimum required credit points, but are now aiming to reach the 12,000 mark. She is specialized in lightning spells and summons several lightning bolts to hit the golem all at once, causing it to intake too much electricity and finally explode into tiny fragments from the shock overload. Wignall is also extremely trained in electric wind, and using the Zephyros Claw spell he brings about massive wind currents that are charged with electric power. The current wraps around the golem, lifting it up in the air and crushing it completely so that it ceases to exist. Both the students are able to cross the 10,000 credit score mark, placing them at the top of the students. Julius, a student with superior ice-wielding power, steps in next. He walks in with confidence and whips out his wand to cast the spell. He sends ice bullets flying across the room and hits all of the golems. The ice bullets are activated and erupt into giant ice structures, completely freezing out the golems. Not only did he defeat his own golem, but those of others too. Before leaving the hall, he confronts Wignall and Lehana and challenges them to a fight, to prove who is superior. They accept his challenge by destroying the ice rose he creates. Due to his defeat, Will still hasn't reached his minimum target and sulks in a corner. The Grand Magic Festival is nearing, and Call sits with him during lunch to talk about it. It is only held once every 2 years, and during the festival 4 different factions compete against each other. These are the Lightning, Earth, Fire, and Ice factions. The festival allows students from all over to fight and present their skills in the stadium. It is the only time when special recruiters from the faction towers that guard the world come down and watch the students perform. Those who display exceptional quality are directly hired without any other requirements, so Call tries to encourage Will to participate in the competitions so that he has the chance to showcase his unique warrior skills. This might be his only chance to ascend into one of the towers and be reunited with his childhood best friend without completing his credit points. The High Mage, who is the leader of all mages and in control of all factions, also attends the event, and Will should try and impress him for a direct entry into the mages' towers. However, he is still not over his embarrassment from previous competitions where his performance was ridiculed by everyone. To encourage him to participate and show him how high stakes this year's festival will be, Call leads him to a seemingly normal door which hides a secret chamber behind it. She picks up Kiki and commands it to use its powers and break down the magical lock placed on the barrier. Behind the door they find a spiral staircase which leads down to a basement filled with students gambling and placing big bets on the prospective winners of the competitions. The posters of the top performing students are up on the walls. They watch silently and in shock about the secret activities taking place there, when Xian stands near them, worrying about his own performance since there are barely any bets on him. When he sees Will, he becomes violent, but Call puts an immediate stop to it and forces him to back off. His cronies are standing ready behind him, giving him fake praises about his superiority which angers him, and he lashes out at them. When the students downstairs notice him, He runs out of there. After classes, Will heads to Gina's tavern to work. The place is mostly filled with exploited miners and dwarves who are there to drown their sorrows in drinks and food. His roommate, Rosti, has also volunteered to help him out so he can return to practice soon. The dwarves have accepted Will like family, and he respects them a lot, which is why he chose to work in this place. As the crowd at the tavern slows down, the two boys are in the kitchen, clearing up the dishes and putting them back in place. Will bends down to pick up a spoon that had fallen. At that very moment, Julius enters the tavern and looks around in disdain. He calls the place disgusting, and when he sees Will stand up, he mocks both him and his work. One of the dwarves hears him and clenches his fist in anger, while staring angrily at the ice elf. When Julius sees him, he begins to throw insults and makes derogatory comments about the entire dwarf community, calling them low-life losers. The dwarves migrated to this world after their home planet was destroyed by celestial beings. Even though they were allowed to live on this new planet with the elves, they were extremely mistreated and looked down upon. A dwarf was a second-class citizen, and no matter what the elves did or said, they could not raise their hands or fight back, as they would be punished greatly. Julius takes advantage of this as he continues bellowing insults at them and sits down to order food and drinks. The atmosphere of the whole tavern has become hostile, and Will slowly takes off his apron and heads toward their table. He has had enough of their mocking and decides it is time to stand up for his friends. Julius is not intimidated by him at all and lifts his leg to kick the plate of food onto him. Will is not deterred at all by this. Instead, it fuels his rage even more as he thinks about the food that was spilled, which was crafted carefully by the wisdom and knowledge of the dwarves who work hard and struggle for their survival every day. Even though the dwarves are labeled as barbarians, it is elves, especially the ones like Julius, who are worse than beasts as they only care about themselves. The two lackeys of Julius see the anger on his face and get up to prepare for a fight. They underestimate his power since he has no magical abilities and advance toward him. Without even moving from his spot, Will grabs both of them and one swift move slams them onto the ground, rendering them unconscious. Julius is amused as well as irritated by this turn in events and casts an ice spell throughout the tavern. Will is able to break down the icicle and fight back for a while. He dodges the attacks and narrowly escapes the ice as his glasses get knocked off his face. But after a point, the ice has surrounded him from all sides until he is slowly backed into a wall. Rosti and the dwarves are trapped behind ice pillars and are unable to help in any way. They try to climb over to reach him, but with no success. Julius casts another spell which emerges from the floor and forms two big ice structures to pin his arms against the wall. With him unable to move, Julius slowly advances to him and casts an ice rose on his chest to freeze his heart and end him. He looks up at Will and sees the determination in his eyes. Instead of ending his life here, he decides to do it publicly and challenges him to compete against him in the upcoming Grand Magic Festival. Will is able to gather his strength and break out of the ice bonds. His rage is more than ever now, and he accepts the challenge. The day of the Grand Magic Festival finally arrives, and the headmaster signals its start with spectacular fireworks. The scouts from the Magic Tower are also present among the audience so that they do not miss out on recruiting any talented student. For the first event, the competitors race through the sky on their dragons, passing hoops to score points. Lahanna wins the race with ease and sets a new record while doing so. The principal watches it with Iris, the secret agent of the Majavander. Iris takes her leave just as the sky race ends, because now she has to put on the act of being a naive student to cheer on Will. On the other hand, Sion is gearing up for the next competition. Earlier, Call had asked him to join their team, and ever since then, he has been on cloud 9, thinking that Call has finally chosen him over Will. However, when he enters the locker room, he is shocked to see Call standing next to Will. He throws a tantrum demanding Cole to explain what the Magic-less loser is doing here, and she tells him that a team must have 21,000 credits to participate in the next event, and he was the only one she could ask to reach that number with her and Will's credits. Sion is not happy and asks Will why should he be dragged alongside a loser like him, when suddenly, Julius passes behind him. Julius gives Will a nasty smirk, and even without turning back, Sion can tell that the ice user's attention was not on him. This infuriates him even more as he thinks that Will is trying to humiliate him again by becoming the rival of a top talent like Julius. Soon, the main event of the day, Crown Attack, begins, and the elf faction mages combine their powers to transform the entire arena into a replica of the lost world of elves. Once their complex magic is finished, the arena is surrounded by a diverse terrain with volcanoes, marshlands, grasslands, and forests. All the teams will start their journey from the very edge of the transformed area, with the goal of reaching the arena first and claiming the crown. However, they will not only have to face the dangerous terrains of the battleground, but also numerous traps that have been set up by the professors. On top of that, fighting with other teams and obstructing others is allowed, making the event even more ruthless. The host hypes up the different teams, especially the teams led by Julius and Wignall, who are considered to be the top contenders. After that, he points towards the team with Will, Call, and Sion, which is the least popular team, and everyone makes fun of Will for trying to participate in the main event. Soon, the teams start heading to their starting points one by one, and Professor Walk is left aghast as he sees Will heading out too. The professor rattles him, asking why is he participating in this dangerous event. Will apologizes, saying that even if he is turned into a laughingstock, he wants to win this event at all costs. He moves away with that, and just as the start of the event is declared, all the contestants rush ahead towards the central arena. They immediately meet the first obstacle in their way in the form of a golem army. Will charges headfirst at the golems, and the audience laughs at him, certain that he will fail. Will simply asks Cole to support him with her earth magic, and she casts a spell to put a metal gauntlet around his arm. With the increased power from the gauntlet, Will punches a golem so hard that it is sent flying and crashes into the drone camera, causing the screens in the arena to explode. No one can believe their eyes as Will keeps on clobbering the golems, and Call tells Sion that as long as Will is using a gauntlet made with magic, they are not breaking any rule of the game. However, all Sion can think about is the time Will saved him from the giant Minotaur monster. The humiliating memories of being saved by someone he always considered inferior are crystal clear in his mind. To overcome the shame he felt that day, Sion had worked hard to grow stronger, but now he realizes that Will is still miles ahead of him. With that, Will's team clears the first obstacle and heads into the next zone, where a bunch of magic boxes shoot rock bullets at them. Will punches the ground with his magic gauntlet, creating a wall that blocks and deflects the rocks. He then runs ahead, and Call uses another spell to create dozens of swords on the ground. Will picks the swords and throws them at the magic cubes, taking them down one by one with incredible precision and speed. As all the cubes explode mid-air, one rolls down as Will misses his mark. The cube readies a rock bullet, but Will grabs the sword and slashes it down in time, clearing the second trap with ease too. As he runs ahead, the views of the audience change. Even the haters start thinking that Will is amazing, but some of them still think it is only because of Cole's magic. Even Ed testifies that Will has perfected his style of fighting by exploring the dungeons, and he can't be challenged by this level of traps. Will's team is in the lead, and they run ahead at full speed, while other teams struggle getting past the various traps. Julius and his team are also making good progress, but it is only Julius who does all the work. He freezes the monsters and traps, and asks his teammates to focus on searching the locations of other teams. His teammates tell him that Will's team is in the lead, and at this rate, he will win. Julius can't let that happen, so he decides to abandon his team and go ahead to deal with his rival himself. On the other hand, Will and his team reach the Enchanted Forest, which is the final zone they must clear before reaching the arena. Dozens of magic circles open up in the forest, and Will realizes that they plan to attack in a straight direction. He immediately cuts out the land beneath the magic circles and tosses them into the air before they can activate so that they face the magic circles in the air. Just as the magic circles activate and shoot a magic attack, they hit each other and get destroyed in an instant. The host is impressed by Will's quick thinking and asks Ed what he thinks of his performance because this trap was his work, and the Snape ripoff is quite disappointed. Meanwhile, Will plans to wait in ambush for Julius in the forest when suddenly, an ice attack almost hits him. The attack pierces his robe and explodes behind Call, who looks ahead to see that Julius is already here before them. Will can't believe that Julius could beat their speed run tactic on his own. His mind is overloaded with questions about how Julius got here so fast and where his teammates are. However, there is no time to ponder on those questions as Julius begins his attack. He shoots a relentless barrage of ice magic at Will, who can only dodge it. The entire location is getting covered in ice, when suddenly, the temperature rises and the ice melts away. Sion appears behind Will, covered in flames that instantly vaporize all the ice in the area. He has had enough of playing the second fiddle to someone who doesn't even have magic. and he plans to change things now. He chants a powerful spell that Cole recognizes and tells Will to get away from it instantly. He is not fast enough to react, so she uses her magic and creates a wall in front of him just as Sion fires his devastating attack. The attack rattles the entire area, and Will is saved only because of the earthen wall. As the attack stops and he comes out of hiding, he finds the entire forest has been burnt away, and Julius is nowhere to be seen. Will is still trying to process what just happened, but Cole knows that Sion attacked both Julius and Will intentionally. She asks Sion what is he doing, and he tells her to shut up because he is done listening to her. He tells Will that it is time for them to fight and settle their conflict once and for all. Will tries to tell him that it is not the time for that, but Sion attacks him, calling him an eyesore who should be crushed as soon as possible. Cole tries to stop them from fighting, but then suddenly, Julius blocks her way with an ice wall. As she wonders how did he survive Sion's bombardment, Julius attacks her. Will gets worried when he realizes Cole is in danger, but he has no time to spare for her as Sion keeps attacking him. He manages to disarm Will, who tells him that it is not the time to fight amongst themselves. In response, Sion only tells him to pick his sword to continue their fight. Will obliges and grabs his sword, getting ready for a battle to get Sion back to his senses. Many years ago, when Will and Sion first started their student life at Academy, Will was the most pathetic boy one could find. People bullied him and stuck notes saying that he was a worthless person on his back. Sion felt disgusted by that, and he decided to help the pitiful boy in his own way. He burnt the note and then told Will that he will allow him to become his underling, and then he won't have to feel alone and useless all the time. However, Will simply ignored him and walked outside, pissing Sion off. Sion still followed him and shook him, asking him to give an answer. With his eyes devoid of life or any expressions, Will told him to let him go, and Sion could only obey him. As Will walked away after hurting Sion's ego, he began hating him. Now, he keeps on attacking Will with magic spells that burn the forest. Will runs and hides behind trees, but Sion's attacks track him and force him to come out into the open. Sion attacks him with a fire whip, and as Will tries to deflect it, another whip comes from behind and grabs him by his leg. Just as he cuts the fire whip to free himself, Sion attacks him with another powerful spell, and Will somehow manages to block it, but his sword has started to get red hot. Sion curses him, asking if he will only jump around to survive and not fight back to win. Will refuses, saying that they are teammates, and he has no time to fight him right now because he is focused on the competition. Sion tells him that he will just burn him to ashes in that case and begins attacking him again. As Will dodges everything, he wonders if he really has to fight against his teammate now. Everyone in the stadium is dumbfounded on seeing this, and Edward smirks as he says that no matter the reason, in fighting among teammates is the worst thing that one can do in this competition. He believes that because of this, the scouts from the tower will mark Will and Sion negatively, and it seems he is enjoying it. The scouts had seen some promise from Sion till now, but seeing this incident, they think he is unfit to be recruited by them. Will's roommate Rosti is worried about him too, when suddenly, Iris comes there and asks if she can sit next to him. They both know each other from previous encounters, and Rosti finds it hard to believe when Iris starts cheering for Will. She tells him that she was not interested in him at first, even though someone reliable had told her about him, but after seeing her in action, she has become his greatest fan. On the other hand, Cole is running away from Julius, while trying to find a way to reach Will and Sion. Julius teases her, asking if the famed Earth Princess is not going to fight back. Cole hates that nickname, and tells Julius to stop calling her that. He attacks her with ice magic, and she blocks it with a stone wall. However, she suddenly sees a magic circle under her feet and realizes that she walked into a trap. A massive amount of dark magic hits her point blank, and everyone is shocked to see it. What is more shocking is that Julius is on each and every screen, facing all the teams at once. No one can understand what is happening as Julius appears to be everywhere. He goes to face Wignall's team too, reminding him that he promised to crush everyone with his secret weapon. Wignall greets him with a familiar spell, returning him the ice flower he had once given him. As the flower distracts Julius, a magic circle opens at his feet and suddenly, he is engulfed in a tornado. Turns out that it was just a clone Julius made with ice and magic stones, and it gets destroyed by Wignall's attack. Everyone is amazed by his performance, but Philly, one of the leaders of the elf faction, thinks that Wignall is completely average, and he barely meets their expectations. She then asks her partner Leffy to let her return to their base now, because she is an introvert, and the atmosphere of the festival is like slow and painful poison to her. Leffy refuses to let her go, because they must watch the entire festival and then report to their master, the elf Maja Vander. Meanwhile, the audience wonder who will win the competition now. They thought that Will's team would win it, but then Sion went ahead and sabotaged it. His classmates are curious about why Sion did that, and even Will is wondering why is the redhead so fixated on him. He remembers the time everyone used to bully him and disrupt his work for no reasons but to poke fun at him. He was depressed because no one knew better than him that he was a failure, but that was no reason for anyone to go out of their way to bully him. He was numbed by the constant harassment and only wanted people to leave him alone. So when Sion approached him that day, he only asked him to let him go. He didn't understand his intentions, but he didn't care about them either, because he planned to give all his time and effort to reach Elfie. That day, when he ignored Sion, he shot a fireball at him out of frustration, and today again, he attacks him in the same fashion. Will dodges his attacks and starts running away. Sion then chants a high-level magic spell and creates a falcon made of flames, which is his guardian. Will is taken aback to see it, and even more shocked when Sion commands the falcon to attack him because guardians are mainly used to defend and buy time. He reacts quickly and jumps up by using his sword as a platform, cutting the wing of the flame falcon in the process. He then picks up his sword and rushes towards Sion, thinking it is his chance to end the battle. However, the flame falcon quickly regenerates its lost wing and begins chasing after him. Will realizes that he must destroy its core to stop it, but that seems hard as the guardian shoots fire at him. He dodges that, and then Sion attacks him from the other direction. Will uses his magic gauntlet to block the attack and gets pushed back. He is exhausted now, but Sion doesn't look in any better shape. Everyone, including Ed, is shocked to see Sion's performance, because commanding a guardian with such skill means he is way beyond the level of an ordinary student. Even the scouts of the Fire faction are interested in him, despite the fact that he betrayed his team. According to their data, Sion was weaker than the top 3 of this batch, but his performance today surprised everyone. The scout leader thinks that there must be some reason that caused him to break through his limits, and he decides to inform the Flame Maja Vander about it immediately. Back in the battleground, Will is on his knees, and he realizes that Sion has grown stronger. Sion asks him if this is all he has got, because he was much stronger when he fought the giant monster. Will asks him why is he doing all this because they have no reason to fight. Sion snaps and asks if he can really say that after everything that happened between them. He asks Will if he has no anger and hatred inside him even after being bullied by him all these years. Will replies that he is angry and hates him, but right now they have to defeat Julius. Hearing Julius' name sends Sion off the edge, and he curses Will for paying attention to everything else except him. He tells him to stop ignoring him, and Will suddenly realizes the reason behind Sion's odd behavior. He understands that Sion has acknowledged him, and now he wants to be acknowledged by him too. Will puts his action glasses and takes his stance, determined to respect Sion's feelings by facing him with everything he has got. Sion is pleased that he is taking him seriously and begins chanting his most powerful spell while the Flame Falcon covers him. Will knows that he can't get through with any half-assed attack, so he decides to watch Sion's spell's timing and then go in for a counterattack. Suddenly, Sion commands his guardian to attack as he shoots dozens of fireballs at once. Will is taken aback to see the scale of the attack, but he has already seen the path of the attacks. He rushes ahead with full speed, dodging the attacks effortlessly. He emerges from the flames and slashes the Flame Falcon's core before heading to Sion. Sion attacks him with another attack point blank, but before their attacks can connect, a stone wall emerges right between them, stopping them. Will hits his head on the wall, and even Sion falls down as Call makes her appearance and tells them to stop fighting. Her clothes are in rags after her fight with Julius, and she tells the boys that she kicked Julius' ass, but then he suddenly disappeared. Sion is a bit late to react, but he gets flustered as he tells Call that it is indecent for her to walk in clothes like this. Call calls him a misogynistic pig for judging a woman by her clothes, and then reminds him that this is all his fault for stating the fight. She then tells Will to rush ahead because he has a score to settle with Julius while she deals with things here. Sion says that he won't let her get in the way of his fight, but Call lashes out on him for being selfish and dumb. Suddenly, Will places his robe on her and thanks her, which causes her to turn red with embarrassment. Will picks his sword and runs away, telling Xian that they will continue their fight another time. Meanwhile, Julius and his team are the first ones to enter the stadium. The host thinks that there is no one who can stop them from taking the throne, when suddenly, Will jumps into the stadium at an incredible speed. He lands with a bang right behind Julius and team, leaving everyone speechless. Will looks intently at Julius and challenges him to a fight, and he was just waiting for that too. Meanwhile, in the White Tower, Will's childhood friend Elfie is sitting by the balcony. Her assistant Sari comes there with a report, but when she calls out to Elf, she finds that she is fast asleep. Sari wakes her up with a slap and tells her to pay more attention to her reputation as a Maja Vander, because all she does is sleep and watch the world below. Elfie rubs her head in pain, and after calming down, she asks Sari what is she here for. Sari gives her some documents containing the list of students with greatest promise, and among them, she recommends one student as the best choice to join the ice faction under her. Elfie takes the documents and finds that the candidate Sari is recommending is Julius. The assistant tells her that even now, Julius is causing quite a stir in the Grand Magic Festival, and she believes that he might become Elfie's successor. Elfie replies that if everything written in the report is true, Julius might really become her successor. Back in the arena, Will walks towards Julius and his team, who grin in anticipation of their fight. Julius makes an ice rose bloom and tells Will that he did well to come here, because he would not have been satisfied if he won the crown without any challenge. More than that, he wanted to humiliate Will in front of everyone to assert dominance. Will just puts his glasses on and tells Julius that as long as he doesn't apologize to the dwarves, he has no intention of losing to him. Julius calls him a delusional sever rat who doesn't know his place and crushes the ice flower. He uses the shards of the flower to create a dense mist that covers the arena, and Will can't see anything. However, with his sharp ears, he can tell that Julius and his lackeys are on the move, and they are circling him. Suddenly, a huge ice crystal attacks him from behind, and Will reacts in time to deflect it. He starts running around in the mist, certain that if he keeps moving, Julius will have a hard time pinpointing his location. Despite that, the ice attacks don't stop coming, but now Will is better prepared and easily dodges them. He thinks that all three of his enemies have shot at him, and judging their positions from the attack, he decides to launch his counterattack. He finds Julius and rushes towards him, but then suddenly, an ice crystal almost hits him. It came from a new direction, and Will wonders how can that happen. As the mist clears, both the lackeys appear behind Julius, who tells Will that neither of them has moved from their place. Will is taken aback by this, but what happens next completely blows him off. As the mist clears, the entire audience gets a shock as they multiple clones of Julius on the arena. Even Ed is forced to stand up from his seat, and Will wonders what is happening. He thinks that maybe the clones are just illusions, but then he realizes that they are real, and that can mean only one thing. Before he can even react, the clones reach him, and Julius tells him to be careful because they explode. He uses his magic to make them explode, and Will cannot move fast enough to avoid it. He gets caught in ice, and everyone in the audience is puzzled. Only few people, including Ed and Wok, know that the spell Julius just used was one of the 12 original magic spells created by the genius mage Elfie. Will knows this too, and he realizes that Julius used first of the 12 spells that makes ice clones of the spellcaster. He asks Julius how can he use Elfie's spell, and he starts laughing in response. He says that it is just because of his natural talent and no other reason. He learned this secret technique by studying on his own, and that means he is on the level of a Maja Vander already. Julius says that Elfie is nothing special compared to him, and one day, he will expose her in front of the world. Will can't bear anyone insulting Elfie, so he breaks free from the ice and charges ahead. Julius just laughs and shoots an ice attack at him, and when Will blocks it, he finds himself in between the clones who are ready to attack him. He keeps on deflecting their attacks one by one, but Julius and his lackeys tell him that if that is all he can do, he is going to lose soon. Julius then decides to show off his skill some more, and suddenly, the clones surrounding will suddenly stop attacking. They suddenly explode into pillars of magic that come together and trap Will inside a pyramid barrier. Will freaks out on realizing that he is trapped, and when he tries to cut through the barrier with his sword, nothing happens. To finish things off, Julius creates a gigantic ice crystal in the air and drops it towards Will, crushing him. Everyone is dumbstruck by his overwhelming strength, and Ed remarks that Julius has the qualities of an ideal magician because he won the fight without even taking a single step. Julius then creates some more clones for insurance and walks towards the edge of the arena. He calls out the scouts, asking them what they think of his performance, and declaring himself as Elfie's successor. Everyone starts cheering for him, thinking that he is incredible, but Will's friends think that Julius is going to look like a pathetic loser soon because the fight is not yet over. Suddenly, the ice crystal crushing Will is cut in half, and as Julius turns around, the crystal shatters into pieces and Will comes out, visibly unharmed. Julius wonders how did he survive the attack, but Will only thanks him for helping him cool his head, because he always gets hot-headed whenever Elfie is involved. He takes his stance, and the frustrated Julius decides to finish him off this time. His entire team attacks Will with ice magic, and they think they hit him, but Will had avoided their attacks and reached behind them already. He knocks out the two lackeys with a single strike, and then suddenly, the clones crumble down. Everyone is confused by what is happening, and Will explains that Julius has not yet mastered the ice clone magic. He was controlling the clones with the support of his teammates, and without them, he can't use the magic properly. He tells Julius that he shouldn't compare himself to Elfie, because he is not fit enough to even be the gum on her shoe. Julius is enraged now, and he screams Will's name as he gets ready to attack him. He creates a rose vine made of ice over his arm and shoots it towards Will, who easily cuts it down. However, that was a double-layered attack and Julius suddenly detonates the roses from a distance, surrounding Will with mist. When the mist clears, his clones surround Will, and he declares that he will show him the difference in their skills. He attacks Will with multiple ice shards, but Will dodges them and reaches near the crown. Since there is more distance between him and the clones now, their attacks become slow, and he can easily dodge and deflect them now. Julius keeps attacking him, knowing that Will was right that he has not mastered the ice clone spell yet. He can only control 4 clones by himself, and even then, their movements are greatly limited. However, he is certain that there is no way in hell for Will to tell him apart from his clones, and he plans to use it to his advantage. Suddenly, Will lunges towards Julius, who panics and immediately creates a rough ice wall between them. Will cuts through the wall with ease and then kicks an ice block towards Julius that hits him in the guts and sends him wheezing. Julius asks how did he know he was the real one, and Will replies that the temperature of the ice clones is very low, and if they are not controlled properly, the cold leaks out and ice crystals form at their feet. Julius immediately looks towards his clones and finds that Will is speaking the truth. He loses his calm and his clones shatter. He gets up and demands to know how an incompetent loser like Will knows this complex spell better than him. Will replies that he and Elfie are childhood best friends who grew at the same orphanage, and that is why he knows her magic really well. He looks at the tower, certain that Elfie must be smiling down on him, and then turns his attention to Julius once again. He declares that he knows all the strengths and weaknesses of Elfie's spells, and Julius refuses to believe him. He shoots an ice crystal at him, but Will cuts it down easily, and Julius loses hope. He falls to his knees, and Will tells him that he is indeed talented because no one has managed to copy Elfie's spells yet. However, he should not get carried away, because Elfie was just 2 years old when she invented the ice clone magic. There is pin-drop silence in the arena after this, and Julius can't wrap his head around the fact that this spell that felt like the greatest achievement of his life was invented by the 2-year-old elf. He realizes that he has barely reached the level of an infant, and that breaks his mind. He starts laughing like a madman before telling Will to stop taking him for a fool. He releases his full power, sending a wave of magic to the arena and creating 8 clones surrounding Will. Julius asks him if he thought just 4 clones was his limit, and declares that control doesn't matter anymore, because now he will overwhelm him with sheer numbers. He summons dozens of ice crystals in the sky, looking like a deranged loser, and Will apologizes to him in advance as he tells him that this is nothing because he remembers being overwhelmed by 10 Elfies in his childhood. Julius grinds his teeth so hard that he starts to bleed. In his blind rage, he sends the ice crystals into the sky, before sending them towards Will. Will easily dodges the attack and then rushes towards the clones, stabbing one of them through the head. Julius is scared for his life now, and he runs away, telling his clones to stop Will. Unbothered by this, Will rushes ahead, dodging the attacks and striking down the clones with a single slash of his sword. He keeps running forward, deflecting the attacks and destroying the clones, but then Julius bombards him with ice attacks. Will blocks everything with great speed, and then dodges the next round of attacks by running away. He takes another clone down with a kick, and then blocks some more attacks before shattering another one. He destroys another clone, and then yeets his sword at the last one. Only the real Julius is left now, and he is completely terrified of Will, who sprints towards him and activates his magic gauntlet to finish him off. Julius tries to cast a spell, but it is too late, and Will punches his face with full strength, sending him crashing into the wall. Julius is knocked out cold, and everyone is shocked that Will manage to beat him. The entire stadium starts applauding and cheering for Will, who is too exhausted now. Call and Sion also arrive there just then, and Call runs towards him to congratulate him. However, when Will turns towards the crown, he is shocked to find Wignall there. The green-haired elf tells him that he must have gotten so busy in his fight that he forgot the real objective of this game was to obtain the crown. Wignall takes the crown and places it on his head, winning the tournament purely because he knew the rules better. Fireworks are shot into the sky to celebrate his victory, and the tournament ends with that. On the top of the tower, Sori writes some notes about the conclusion of the tournament, but Elfie is shivering in her seat, asking her if there is any magic to turn back time or erase memories. Sari tells her that there is not, and even if there was, she won't let her use it. She asks her what is wrong, and finds that Elfie is in tears because earlier Will said that he was tormented by 10 Elfies in the past. Back in the arena, Will finally sits down to rest and Call reaches by his side. Sion can't believe that Will defeated even Julius, and he swears to be the one to defeat him. Meanwhile, Will apologizes to Call that Wignall took the crown, but she doesn't mind it. Neither does he, because he managed to fulfill his promise by beating Julius. At night, Will and his friends go to the tavern he works at, where the dwarves are throwing a party for celebrating his victory. Dawn, the leader of the dwarves, makes a toast and starts the party. Cole gets surrounded by nosy aunties who ask her when is she getting married to Will, while Professor Wok goes around thanking the dwarves for taking care of Will. By morning, only a handful of them are left awake. After downing a drink, Dawn asks Will if he got scouted by the tower, but Call says that he didn't. Not only did they have a fight among their team members, they even failed to win the competition. She says that it is all Sion's fault, and then Rusty comes there, asking if they didn't invite Sion to the party. Will replies that he tried to invite him, but he angrily rejected his offer. Dawn says that it's all good, because at the end of the day, Will won and they got an apology from Julius. But that's not all. Right now, Julius is working in the kitchen, washing dishes while screaming and cursing his situation. The owner tells him to stop whining and move his arms, because in the culture of dwarves, they apologize with actions and not just words. Julius and both his lackeys have to work at the tavern to apologize, and he thinks that it is even more humiliating than being defeated by Will in front of the entire school, because of which he was not scouted either. Seeing all the chaos around them, Professor Wok worries about the coming day. Cole thinks that after Will showed his abilities to everyone, they will treat him better, but the professor thinks that the result may be different from what they expect. The next day, as Will and Cole walk through the halls, 2 students approach them and ask Will if he can join their dungeon raiding team. Will is dumbfounded and keeps staring at them, so the boys get embarrassed and say that they are acknowledging his talent so they should come with them. Despite those words, their tone is like they are ordering Will around. Soon, more groups come there and start asking Will to join their teams instead. They gang up on him from all sides, and poor Will can't process the sudden fame. Cole realizes that this was what Wok was worried about. She can't bear to see Will being overwhelmed, so she rushes Iz and tells them to get away. She calls them fake hypocrites, who used to mock Will all the time, but now they are asking him to join them. She turns to Will and asks if he is not angry by their hypocrisy, but Will is delighted. It is the first time someone has asked him to join their team, and his eyes can't stop glistening with joy. Seeing this gives the fakes courage, and one of them tells Call to get away and holds Will's hand, asking him to join their team and come to the dungeon with her tomorrow. Call panics and immediately pulls Will towards her, declaring that they are going shopping tomorrow, so Will is not free. At night, she freaks out on realizing what she did, and thinks that it is almost like they are going on a date. Just then, her roommate Rose arrives there with some coffee, and she has also heard about Cole and Will going on a date. Cole tries explaining that it is not like that, but Rose tells her to cut the crap because she knows how desperately she wants to get in Will's pants. She is willing to play the role of her wingman and says that they should start preparing for tomorrow. On the other hand, Will is busy doing his homework, and Rusty asks him if he is going to the dungeon tomorrow. Will tells him that he is going shopping, Even though he was half forced by Colonel on hearing that it is just going to be Will and Call, Rosti gets jealous because he too has eyes on Will. The next morning, Call eagerly waits for Will at the city square, determined to make sure to turn this shopping trip into a successful date. Will arrives soon, and she is smitten to see him. He then praises her hairstyle and dress, saying seeing her look so cute got his heart racing. Call has no response to being hit by this smooth criminal, and she can only thank him. Suddenly, Rosti comes there running and apologizes for being late. Call is dumbfounded because she never ordered a third wheel on their date and asks Will what is happening. He tells her that Rosti requested to join the shopping trip because he also needed some stuff, and he didn't see a problem inviting him in. Call is aghast, and then Rosti seductively slips his hand into Will's before taking him away. She is certain that friends don't hold hands like that, and then Rosti teases her, further confusing her about his intentions. Later, Rosti beats Call to the punch by searching for the book Will wanted before her. Next, he helps him dress up, while Call just watches everything like a cuck. Their entire shopping trip goes like this, and Call is very upset by the end of the day. Will asks her what is wrong, and she yells at him, asking what is the deal with Rosti. She says that they are suspiciously close, and judging by Rosti's face, she has doubts that he is a girl who is into cross-dressing. Will assures her that Rosti's a guy, and he is the bigger one of the two. He says that physical touch is Rosti's love language, and he has always been clingy since they first met. That makes Call worry even more, and just then, Rosti comes back with some drinks. He has only brought 2, and plans to share Will's drink, but Cole can't let that happen. She tells Rosti to drink from her glass, and he decides to confront her properly. He tells Will to go and get his sword fixed up while they stay here, and even Call agrees, saying that the dwarven smiths won't like mages showing up in their shop anyway. Once Will leaves, Cole takes deep breaths and then asks Rosti if it is her imagination or he likes Will as more than just a friend. Rosti gets up and leans closer to her, saying that he loves Will more than anyone else in the world, and Will also loves him back. Cole gets pissed at this and replies by saying that she is closer to Will, and they used to hug each other all the time when they were both 4. Rosti says that it is a thing of the past, and now Will has him. He reveals that they take friendly baths together each night, and Cole is worried that maybe Will swings the other way. Meanwhile, Will is worried if his 2 friends will get along, when suddenly, the elite student Lehana comes to see him. He is shocked to see Lehana, who is regarded as the perfect student who has got full credits in all the subjects. He wonders what reason she has for coming to see a loser like him, and she asks him to come with her for just a bit. She leads him to a tea house, and to his utter shock, Will finds that all other top students of their batch are already there. Lehana tells him that soon, a 1-week dungeon raid is going to be held, which is going to give everyone a lot of credits. For that, she wants to form a party with the 5 people present in this room. It seems that others didn't know about her inviting Will earlier. Shin demands an explanation about why she called the magic less user here, and even Julius is not happy. Will is also anxious, and he looks at Lehana to ask her what was she thinking when she brought him here. She is confused and asks if it was a bad idea, and Will realizes her brain cells have gone on a vacation. Suddenly, Shin angrily moves towards Will because he ignored him, but before he can do anything, Wingnall swings his wand and creates an illusion that they are in a field of flowers. He says that such reckless actions don't suit mages, and Shin has no choice but to back away. Wignall says that they should at least hear out what Lehana is thinking. She reveals that she was impressed by Will's performance in the recent tournament, and she is certain that he has a skill set that no one among them has. That is why she wants to recruit him in their team, believing that he will be really helpful. Julius disagrees with her, saying that Will can't even use the basic magic to search for enemies, and he will only be dead weight for them. Shin says that he doesn't want to be in the same party as Will again, but Wignall calls both of them sore losers. He says that they have no right to reject Will when he beat both of them in the tournament. He says that Will is as strong as a dwarf and as agile as monsters, and though unrefined, his sword skills were enough to defeat 2 of the best mages in their batch. Julius says that by this logic, even Wignall is below Lehana, who has more credit than him. Wignall has no shame in accepting that, and he says that he respects Lehana, so he will go with her decision to select Will in their team even if he doesn't like it personally. Lehana then declares that she plans to use everyone here to achieve fame and ascend the White Tower. Will asks if she was not scouted, and she replies that the Lightning faction reached out to her. but she didn't accept their offer because she was not satisfied. She then tells everyone that she is from a family of knights and they are short-lived in general. That is why she wants to do something great with her short life, and just ascending up the tower won't be enough. She declares that she wants to be a Maja Vander and knows that everyone in the room has same ambitions. She asks everyone to place their coin in a cup to agree to the team formation. She goes first, followed by Wignall, and even Julius and Shen agree to this team because they know they will outperform everyone. Will is the last one left, and he wonders what decision he should make. Later, he goes to his friends, who were waiting for him in the market. They ask him what took him so long, but Will just walks ahead and tells them that he is going to take part in the dungeon raid as a member of Lehana's party. The next day, Professor Wok tells the students about the grand dungeon raid that is going to take place after 10 days. All students have to participate in it, and the dungeon will be temporarily opened till the 10th floor for them to face monsters worth 5 credits or more. It is their only chance to earn over 1,000 credits at once, and if they can manage to defeat the floor bosses, they will get a lot of extra credits. In the next lecture, Ed tells them that the Grand Dungeon Raid is risky, and every year, some students lose their life. The professors will be stationed in the dungeon, but they won't be able to reach everywhere quickly, so Ed warns everyone to know their limits and stay in them. Soon, the base camp for the Grand Dungeon Raid is set up at the 6th floor. Call goes with Will's group, and when Lehana says that she didn't invite her, she says that she comes as a package deal with Will. Rosti can't go with them because he is just an artifact maker, but Will thanks him for all the artifacts he has prepared for this raid. After that, Wok and Ed assemble all the students and tell them that they have to dive in the dungeon and survive for 1 week. There are base camps at the 8th and the 10th floor, which will act as safe zones. The professors will be stationed there, and if anyone is injured or wants to retire, they must reach those safe zones. With that, everyone gets ready, and the Grand Dungeon Raid begins. They all immediately jump into action while Will thinks about how he can finally make Elfie notice him if he performs well in this session. Before he could understand the plan though, Wig immediately uses his wind magic to blast them off into the air at an incredible speed, quickly covering ground, but they soon start to fall down, which scares Will as he wonders what the hell is happening. Thankfully, they all stop mid-air just before falling down and softly touch the ground, while Will falls face first in the dirt. Call asks whether he is okay, but he immediately gets up, trying to adjust with his new party. Suddenly, the cave behind them explodes and a giant crimson ant emerges. Will thought it was only one monster, which wouldn't be a big problem for him. But they seem to have stumbled upon an ant colony as a huge horde of ants start moving towards them. Will knows that mages are no good in close-quarter combat, which means he will have to deal with these monsters, so he gets ready with his sword. But Wig stops him and tells him to observe. Suddenly, Lehana rushes past them at the speed of lightning as Wig tells him that Lehana comes from a family of knights and is an exception amongst the mages, since she is an expert in close-quarter combat. She shows it to full effect by utterly styling on the monsters as she destroys them in a single strike, shocking Will to the core. They soon move ahead, but things are not going as per Will's plan. He remembers Wok telling him about the most basic magic spells known as Search, which can help them find monsters in the area, but since he can't use that magic, he is unable to find them quick enough. Another monster appears behind Will who was caught off guard, but he is saved by Julius, who freezes the ant and tells Will to not come in his way. He realizes that he can't kill even a single beast if this keeps happening, and soon enough, Wig uses a huge wind blade magic circle to decimate every single monster around them. Wig comments that he expected Will to be of some help, but till now he has been pretty useless and is not even able to act in his role of being the shield. Lehana speaks up though, claiming that he simply didn't get the time or the opportunity to get into his role, and believes that they will soon be glad that Will was with them further on in the dungeon. They don't even collect the drops since it will only slow them down, while Sion tells Wig to not slow them down. Will tries to snap out of it and start helping, but he is still of no use since the monsters are killed before he even gets the chance to properly see them. He just simply keeps following them all around the dungeon as a pack mule while they deal with all the enemies. Soon enough, Lehana looks at her watch and tells everyone that it has already been a day and they should take a small break before moving forward. They are in the middle of a cave, though which is not really safe, so Wig uses his Elven to create an illusion of a firewall which doesn't do any harm, but is enough to scare any monsters away from attacking them. Lehana soon tells him to distribute the ration that they brought with them. So Will immediately drops his pack and takes out some food for each member of the team and hands it to them. When he moves towards Wig, though, the green-haired cunt tells him not to come near and simply leave the food on the floor since he don't want to touch Will as he is not worthy of that. Call is horrified by this discrimination and, like an average white woman, starts screaming at Wig. But he claims that it's not only Will. He doesn't want to be touched by any of them apart from Lehana since they are all mages while he is an elf. He only lets Lehana touch him because he deems her worthy enough. Will tells Call to let it go as he sits on one side thinking about how lucky the elven race is. Just like the dwarves, even elves are not from this world. But they are extremely gifted magic users and that's why respected by all the humans. Even at the top of all Majavanders stays the elven queen who commands all of them. Soon Lehana calls them all for a meeting and tells them that they are now going towards the 10th floor where the boss monster named Nabara stays. She claims that slaying that beast will award them 110 credits, which is an incredibly high amount, and since there is only one of this beast, they need to make sure they are the ones who kill it. She reveals that she specifically created this party with the goal of slaying Nabarus so that she can get noticed by the upper institutes and the scouts. Wig, however, asks whether it is wise to go for the main dish without even tasting the appetizers. Lehana tells Wig that his mom is an appetizer and claims that she wants them to face Nabarus with their full strength with a high mana pool, and they can always deal with the smaller monsters after defeating the boss. She then tells them that she wants to take the shortest route to the 10th floor and asks whether anyone has any issues. Will knows that the boss monster is going to be very dangerous, but he also needs the credits, so he agrees. They soon enter the 10th floor where, to their surprise, a shit ton of monsters are already dead on the floor. Will wonders whether someone reached here before them, but Xian claims that it's impossible since they took the shortest route and even skipped all the base camps. Will bends down to check the dead monster on the ground and realizes that it was killed using brute force instead of magic, which is very suspicious. Even after that they continue going deep when suddenly they all are shocked beyond measure to find that Nabarus has also been slain as the three-headed dog laid on the floor. This actually scares the mages who immediately start using their search magic, while Will gets flashback of Wak telling him that search magic has flaws since a mage can always use cloaking magic to hide himself. But there is also a very dangerous monster that could do the same. Will's heart starts pumping as he looks up to see red eyes as the monster charges a beam and shoots it at them. Will tells everyone to step back while he blocks the beam with his sword and deflects it. Before they could even realize what's happening though, the monster appears behind Wig and slams him into a wall drawing blood. The remaining mages immediately start preparing spells, but the monster slams his hand on the ground, shaking up the entire foundation. The ground below them shatters and they all start falling down, while Will immediately lunges towards an unconscious Wig and saves him during the fall. He gets up and looks around to find himself in a weird lair and realizes that they are on a completely different floor. Xian and Julius are also stuck together as they too can't believe that they have fallen down to the 11th floor, which is outside the academy territory, so they can't expect to be saved. Lehana, on the other hand, is bleeding from her head while she thinks whether they can ever leave alive since the 11th floor is on a completely different level from all the other floors and only high-ranking mages are allowed to set foot here. That turns out to be true as a huge snake attacks Will, but he manages to slice its head off, which snaps Wig back to reality as he wonders whether this loser killed the beast alone. Will immediately tries to help Wig get up, but the cunt slaps his hand away, claiming that he can help himself. He starts wrapping his arm in bandage, while Will calculates that they have nearly lost all of their gear, but everyone has enough supplies to survive 2 days at max. But since they are on the 11th floor, the better guess would be that they have 1 day in total to escape this hellhole. He immediately tells Wig that they should look for Call and the others since that's the only way they could survive this level. Wig tells him that they should simply sit tight and wait for help as per Academy rules, but Will tells him that with the monster on the 10th floor, no one is coming to save them this quick. He turns out to be correct since 2 professors of the Academy have been killed and crucified on the rocks, while a horde of monster create a stampede on the base camp of level 8, while Professor Eliza tries to get the situation under control. Wak realizes that something definitely seems off, while Ed runs up to him, claiming that the event is cancelled, and they are going in as something is seriously wrong. Back on the 11th floor, Wig keeps using search magic, but Will tells him to chill out since he will only tire himself out. He tells the elf to let him and Kiki search for monsters nearby while he should search for the monsters far away. He claims that they should keep the fighting at a minimum, which surprises Wig as no one can be this calm in a situation like this. But Will has been in such situations multiple times and has learned everything there is about the dungeons. Suddenly, they sense a monster coming their way, and it turns out to be 3 pig monsters trying to surround them. Will decides to take the 2 monsters in front while Wig deals with the one in back. The elf immediately uses his wind magic to blast the monster away and turns around shocked to see Will slicing through the strong monsters as if they are nothing. He runs through them with an incredible speed, dodging their attacks while landing deadly attacks of his own. Suddenly, Wig realizes that his monster wasn't dead, yet since it rushes towards him to attack. The elf realizes that he doesn't have much time to counter, so he tries to use illusion magic to push the monster back, but Will screams at him not to do that. To his surprise, the monster simply pushes through the illusion magic and was about to kill the elf, but Will comes in clutch and slashes the monster cleanly in half. Wig sits there still in shock, while Will tells him that these pig monsters do not have eyes, so illusions won't work on them. This totally breaks Wig, who claims that he is the one who has always been a loser, while Will wonders where will he find a therapist for this idiot now. If you liked this video, make sure to check out this brand new anime about an F-ranked loser who turns out to be the strongest adventurer by killing monsters.